Welcome to Stars Podcast, your growth mindset mecca. We are all about self-leadership principles here at Stars Podcast. Our guests come from all over the world with very unique stories of how they hack their way into success. As you'll quickly find out, nothing happens overnight. And as always, enjoy the journey. Wanted to let you know this episode is brought to you by Fuzzy Monkey Coffee. You may think you're drinking good coffee, but are you really? Fuzzy Monkey Coffee Company challenged you to buy a bag of our specialty fresh roasted coffee with an exclusive Stars Podcast discount. Visit www.fuzzymonkeycoffee.com and enter STARS POD15 at checkout to get 15% off any bag or coffee single-serve pods. My special preference is Squirrel Monkey. Also check out their NFT project, fuzzymonkey.com/NFT. Also give us a look over on TikTok at Stars Podcast with the Running with Ron episodes, talking about mindset, running hacks, and all-around storytelling to commemorate and document the journey to a 100-mile run in under 24 hours, which is happening September 9th and 10th at the Pine Creek Challenge. Enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome back. This is Ron Jordan, your host over at Stars Podcast, coming out of Rocinante Studios in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Today we have a guest coming in, a fellow ultramarathon runner. I met him in line at one of our check-ins and stayed close to him on Instagram and other forms of social media, and it's been really great to see his evolution and what he has sort of carved out for himself. Michael McTighe, is that how you say the last name?
It's pronounced McTighe, like what you wear around your neck.
Yeah, Michael McTighe is on our show today. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Yeah, hi. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So we met, I believe it was at Cinnamahone, right?
Yep. We crossed each other a couple times on the course, but we caught up at the finish line, exchanged social media. It was a great day. It was my first in-person ultra race. It was a phenomenal event.
It was one of your only trail races, was it not?
It had to be one of my first 5. I had done like one race at a ski resort, which was kind of trail. And then I did one that was road and trail, but that was my first big trail run.
Yeah, I remember because we were talking and you were like, yeah, I just been running on the road and I'm going to try this today. And I'm like, what? This guy's crazier than me.
Yeah, well, I got caught up in the ultra endurance world and I just realized I had to do it. And up until that time, really didn't do any practicing in technical terrain. So the course was kind of a shock. I didn't realize how weak of a downhill runner I was, and gave me a great idea where I needed to focus my energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into all of the races that you have going on, I wanted to talk about a little bit here at Stars Podcast. You know this, we're all about growth mindset and self-leadership. And I'd like to explore that with you a little bit, like kind of where that mindset comes from for you itself. Was there something in your life that kind of got you to a point where you're like, I need to be more introspective, I need to figure things out, or are you just like beating yourself up like some of us?
Yeah, I think so. Well, there was a noticeable change about 2 years ago when the pandemic occurred. You know, there's that old adage that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But for me, it was more like a harrowing existential crisis and like belief that, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And, you know, it's kind of like change or die. I was working a job that was kind of unsatisfying, but it was socially righteous. And, you know, the job fell apart when the pandemic occurred. And I was in pretty poor health and realized that I needed to change my life. And so I just kind of ran out the door, quit smoking cigarettes, and sort of never stopped. Went back to grad school, and I'm familiar with some of the work by Dr. Dweck, who wrote a book on growth mindset and has done a lot of research on that. I sort of embraced it and just kept going with it. It's definitely very freeing.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit of Dr. Dweck's teachings and what that entails?
Yeah, so I read the book Mindset, I believe is the title, and it's it looks at the difference between growth mindset and closed mindset. And she's done a lot of work, I believe, with school children, where they looked at how teachers will say things like, well, you know, everybody has the opportunity to improve things that they're weak upon. And then they looked at other teachers who said, well, no matter what, a couple of you are going to struggle in this class. And so they found that the teachers who embraced growth mindset were more likely to have children that excelled in their education. And, you know, that translates pretty much across the board in most areas of life. It works in the business domain, the academic domain,
Yeah,
I'm
when
sure in
you
the sports
so it's
domain.
almost like if you believe in the if you believe that there's a path forward, then the students will create their own path forward.
Yeah, it's a little bit of hard work and effort.
Yeah, so you believing in somebody really makes a difference. um I've said this 100 different ways, honestly, is like when you can be there to support somebody in their efforts, it's like just having that support system can be enough for that person to kind of spread their wings and fly on their own. So whenever you're talking about that and the quit smoking and you started running, that person to support you, who is that?
Well, I mean, I have a fantastic life partner who I live with, and
Mm-hmm.
she's very supportive of what I do. She crews me at the 100-mile races and stays up for 30 hours at a time.
Yes.
But she's just genuinely always been very supportive. So if I were to tell her that, Lily, I want to be a professional juggler, she would probably embrace that because it's just the kind of person that she has. But I'm not the most connected person with my family. I have a couple aunts and uncles who I'm close with. I
Sure.
moved far away a long time ago, and so there's kind of that disconnect there. But I have a good network of friends, especially within the endurance community, and I just have the best partner in life.
I'll tell you what, it does make all the difference. My wife is the same way. She's always there for me, and being in my crew is like the utmost importance. One of these days I'm going to do an unsupported race, and I think that is going to be the biggest struggle for me,
Right.
is not having her there is probably going to be the hardest part. Because I really do look forward to that. And as you know, like whenever you get to those checkpoints, you're like, oh my God, like thank God I can see you. And there's like fresh Pringles or whatever, like your soup du jour is, on those races, is like, oh, I'm so happy to see you and having them there. But yeah, so you quit smoking too. My God, like that's massive. You had to feel like, let me ask you, how did it feel whenever you initially quit? Because I know a lot of my listeners struggle with addictions and those types of things. Like, and did you do it cold turkey? What was the process?
Yeah, it was very arduous and lengthy. And I could speak to a lot of things. I have a history with alcohol abuse and substance abuse. I don't really want to go too deep down that road,
You don't
but
have
I,
to.
I could definitely say that quitting nicotine was one of the harder things that I've ever had to do. And um, again, I had a similar experience back in 2015 where I changed my life. I quit my job to go to college and rented a room for my aunt, and I was smoking 3 packs a day at the time, which is a really hard habit to fund when you don't have a paycheck.
Mm,
And so I quit smoking, and then almost immediately afterwards, I got into sort of a freak car accident. And I realized, like, if I could get through this stressful time, I could do anything. And that's where endurance came into my life the first time. And so I went from couch to marathon in about 9 months. But then I moved away. I went to my 4-year institution, and life stress, or whatever you want to call it, caused me to pick up cigarettes again. And for me, it's either one or the other. I'm either running 40 miles a week or I'm smoking 3 packs a day. There's no in between.
hmm.
And I probably attempted to quit, a dozen times. I always try to supplement that with running. I feel like running is a great supplement to trying to quit nicotine because it helps with the breathing and the oral fixation, and kind of wears you out. It gives you the happy chemicals. Um, this time what
Right.
worked for me was I used the Chantix. I used the Chantix in combination with the nicotine gum and the patches and the
Uh-huh.
lozenges. So a very, multimodal approach. And it was very effective. I did have some side effects. I had some leg cramping and some nightmares and some behavioral changes, but they were pretty short lived. And yeah, I haven't smoked a cigarette in a little over 2 years now.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. So whenever you're doing the running and are you in a 40-mile a week now?
No, so I just ran a 100-miler a couple weeks ago, so I'm kind of in recovery for that.
Okay.
For the rest of February, I don't intend to run more than 20 miles a week.
Okay. Got it. Now, whenever you're doing your running, like what are some of your do you ever get it in your head where you just don't want to go? How do you get over that?
So at the beginning, it was like that. I started running because, I had these health indicators that I was in poor health and I wasn't very satisfied with my life. And it was work at the beginning, right? Because my goal
Yep.
was I wanted to lose 10 pounds and fix my cholesterol. But something happened, man. Something happened the day that I ran my first half marathon. A lot of people will refer to it as the wall, like the harrowing wall that everybody encounters. And I just sort of broke through that day, and it's never really been a chore. I love to run. I don't have any difficulties putting the shoes on, getting it in. When I create training blocks with my coach, I'm very consistent with maintaining, high completion rates with my trainings. It's fun for me. It's not much of a chore. And I have a lifestyle right now as a graduate student who's doing a lot of online learning where, my schedule is conducive to that kind of training.
What are you in graduate school for?
So I'm getting my master's degree in experimental psychology. You might be able to see I'm in the psychophysiology lab right now. So we've got bioamplifiers and the computers, and we've got the shielded chamber in the other room. So yeah, I want to be a researcher. I just had some interviews for a PhD program. Basically want to be a lifetime academic.
Okay, understood. You know what? That is so fascinating to me that you're going to be like, especially as an endurance athlete, because everything evolutionarily points to what we're doing as insanity, because you're putting your body to the point of breaking. In your mind, that's what it thinks, but you're actually able to go so much further, and our bodies are so much more durable than we give them credit for. So to understand that you're going to grad school to understand how the brain works, I assume is like, this is why you're doing experimental psychology, is like trying to understand why people make the decisions that they make. Is that accurate?
So yeah, I am interested in decision making and mind and body connections and things like that. There's this interesting relationship between academics and ultra endurance, because there's this overlap of the need to do something difficult, right? Because I'm a recovering underachiever. I always took the easier, softer way when I was a kid, and it didn't really work out for me very well. And so there was a paper that this guy named Brace did on mental toughness and self-efficacy in ultramarathon runners, and he studied the Hurt 100 trail race. And in his demographics, he found that over 40% of the runners had some kind of graduate degree, which, if you compare that to the rest of the population, is just like completely disproportional. And you don't have to be smart to run ultras. I definitely don't think that I'm the brightest bulb in the box. But it's that need to do something difficult,
I had to laugh at that.
Yeah, there's just the challenge of, not taking the easier, softer way.
That's crazy, because I have a grad degree myself.
Yeah. What's yours in?
I got an MBA.
Yeah. And I bet you could probably find some relationships between some of the projects that you had to do and just grinding on the trail.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are definite similarities in between those. Yeah, I mean, God, everything, it just seems like, and I'm sure that you've done this too, is the more you talk to your fellow ultra endurance runners, how similar our brains work and how we've gone through these similar, like, triumphant phases in our lives where either I like how you said recovering underachiever, like we've all been in that boat, and then all of a sudden we weren't, and now we can't stop.
Yeah. I'm afraid of the alternative. I'm actually afraid of going back to that person who smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day and is addicted, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's quite frightening. And this is great. This is the bomb. I love what I'm doing now. Look at this.
Yep.
They're cool.
It's very cool. So you're also like a glutton for punishment also, like not only like on the trails, but you do these things on the treadmill. And I really want to dig in on that, because you've done, you tell our listeners, like, what have you done on the treadmill, from like a endurance perspective? We'll say that, like, what have your endurance races been on that treadmill? Because they're significant.
Yeah. So, right after I met with you at Cinnamahone 50K, I became obsessed with the 100-mile distance. And so, I wasn't like, I felt like, okay, now I'm an ultra runner. I've done 50K, but there's almost like this leap to the next level when you start talking about belt buckles and 100 miles. Um, and I just wanted it so bad. So just a couple weeks after the 50K that we did, which I think was in September or October,
It was
I had
October.
registered. Yeah, I registered for the treadmill 48-hour endurance challenge, and so um, I basically trained on the machine and nowhere else for the next couple months doing. It started out with something that I called the marathon sandwich, which was a half marathon on Friday, full marathon on Saturday, and a half marathon on Sunday. Of course, you could do the open face, which is just the half, and then the full. Um, but yeah, I ended up building up to back-to-back marathons on the machine and attempting the treadmill 48-hour challenge. And there's two ways you could do it. You could do either the 100-mile fixed distance or as far as you can go in 48 hours. I was scared of the DNF, and so I chose the 48-hour option.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it was the day after Christmas. I ran 100 miles on the treadmill in 23 hours and 50 something minutes. So just under the 24-hour mark.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I think some people call it the mental challenge of a lifetime. I didn't look at it that way. I kind of saw that it was the easier, softer way because I had been watching documentaries on, Leadville and the Barkley Marathon and Badwater 135. And so I'm looking around. It's like I got a fully stocked aid station. I've got, the restroom just a couple steps away. My girlfriend's there the whole time. Um, but it was also difficult because I had this wonderful office chair that was just kind of beckoning me the
Yeah.
whole time. So it was really easy to stop and take breaks.
Did you watch anything like or did you just go? You just stared at the wall for that full 23 hours,
I
24
think I
hours
watched a running documentary and yeah, it was what's it called? Unbreakable, the
while you're running?
2010 Western States. Yeah, it was very meta. It's kind of fun. But I'm lucky enough to really, really like music. Before endurance, I used to play in bands and, I was a performer for a while. I minored in music. And so I could make like a 30-hour playlist of just heavy metal music and go with it for hours. So I didn't really get bored. I didn't have to deal with any kind of boredom.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot would struggle is like, how do we, and this is what I talk about with all of our ultra endurance family, is keeping yourself occupied during those times is like the hardest part, is to keep your brain occupied on something productive while it's trying to tell you to stop. You're like, you have to find these avenues to be like, no, we're not stopping. We're actually just going to think about this thing. Um, what are some of the some of the hurdles that, or tips and tricks rather, to get over your mental blocks? Do you have any at all? I mean, you
I
say
mean,
you
I
don't struggle with boredom, so I'm curious.
I just really like music, and I think that music is one of the greatest performance enhancing drugs that are out there. And so I could put on a playlist of, Iron Maiden and Metallica and just focus in on that. When I did treadmill, I broke it up. So at no point was I ever running a 10-minute, 11-minute pace for more than 5 miles. So I would do about 5 miles and then I would drop down and walk for half a mile. And, every 12 and a half miles, I'd stop and eat like peanut butter and jelly because the idea of accomplishing 100 miles in one go is really a lot to tackle mentally. And so breaking it down into manageable chunks makes it much more easy.
Yeah, and that's really how you break down any large goal of anything, any large project that you're doing, is you have to break it up into chunks, and being able to eat it and digest it in that respect. It takes a really unique perspective on how to solve problems too. And I don't think that, and I think that's why a lot of people fail at the 100 miler or whatever 50K marathon. You break it down to anything, is their lack of ability or their loss of focus to break something down into those smaller chunks. That's why people fail, is it overwhelms them. Anything that they try and do, it ends up overwhelming them. So I'm always fascinated by how people can overcome that feeling of overwhelming, because that could happen just by trying to get out of the bed for some people. Like that could be just overwhelming. Just their day ahead of them could be that overwhelming. Have you, in your course of study now, like what are you learning more about the mind that you didn't know before?
Yeah, so interestingly, in the psychophys lab here, we do a lot of work on emotion regulation, psychological strong construct. Like, how does a person's ability to regulate their emotion influence performance, you know, psychopathology, anxiety, depression? I did a recent survey study on a virtual race, and I looked at how emotion regulation predicts performance in these races. And so we didn't find that it predicted completion of the event, but the event that I studied, people were able to run 1,000K or more. And we found that emotion regulation, just not giving up, not becoming overwhelmed by what you're feeling, did predict the total distance ran by the participants in the race. So that was kind of cool.
So what was the question then? What was the correlation?
The research question: does emotion regulation predict performance in a virtual ultramarathon? And that was a significant relationship.
Wow. So they're kind of explain that to me. What does that mean? Significant relationship?
Well, I mean, that's just a statistical term.
Okay.
The probability that this event occurred by chance is less than 5%. So basically, emotion regulation did account for what we call the variance. It influenced the participants' ability to participate in this race and run more than 1,000K.
And how did you measure like their ability to regulate emotions?
Yeah, so in the psychological sciences, we use validated scales, which somebody will dedicate their whole life to coming up with a certain questionnaire and measure its validity, making sure that it gets at exactly what it's supposed to get at, and its reliability, meaning that the scale can be used over a certain number of period of times and is accurate to a certain degree. So I use what's called the difficulties in emotion regulation scale, which is it measures a bunch of different constructs that are associated with a person's ability to manage their emotions.
What was that called again?
It's called the difficulties in emotion regulation scale. We call it the DERS in our lab.
I always like new tools, so
yeah,
always excited to hear about things like that. Maybe even look that up and see if we can't see some of those questions. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be just from personal experience. Like I know whenever I start feeling that overwhelmed feeling, it's like you realize how quickly you can spiral if you don't get it, if you don't nip it immediately. Like if you don't stop that mindset, you can spiral pretty quickly.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I'm constantly trying to make sure that we're just biting up, 1 mile, 100 steps. What are some of the games that you play on the trail inside of your own head that's not music?
One thing I do that's kind of funny, it keeps my attitude up, is I post a lot of memes when I do 100-mile races. So a couple days before the event, I'll get like 20 memes prepared that are usually kind of self-deprecatory, making fun of myself. And I'll check social media, I'll look at my messages, I'll chat with people. And when I feel like I need a break, because for instance, when you're on the treadmill for a long period of time, certain bits of stimuli really get into your head. For example, one of the maintenance people parked outside of our apartment had flashing lights, and the flashing lights into the window were just like the most overwhelming sensation that I can imagine. I actually had to like get off the machine and close the blinds because I couldn't take it anymore. And then when I got back on the treadmill, I was just like, all right, I'm going to scroll through Facebook for a couple minutes or Instagram. And that's able to get me to reset myself pretty effectively. And of course, other people, like the last race that I did, I couldn't have done it without my crew and my pacers.
Yeah, that's actually pretty funny that you make the memes and create these like almost distractions, for you to laugh at and get a different emotion. It's almost like counteracting that negativity with the positivity. If you're laughing and smiling and scrolling through Facebook and all these things, it's like it counteracts the other side of it, which is like the, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't believe I'm doing this. Can you like also run us through, I'm sure that you have this, the amount of miles that you've run since you quit smoking and you've made this change? Do you know how many miles it's been?
Oh God, I have access to that because I have been involved in some kind of virtual race since probably step one. So I don't know exactly offhand, but when I first started running, I registered for the Great Virtual Race across Tennessee, which was a total phenomenon. It's what helped change my life. It was a virtual 1,000K that took place over 4 months. And it was organized by Lazarus Lake from the Barkley Marathon. And we had 17,000 people in a Facebook group. And it was just totally lit, man. It was the coolest thing I've ever done. There was all sorts of culture and lore, and I think Jane Benfer was in there laugh reacting at people's stuff. It was a wild time. But anyway, after that, Laz announced that he was doing the circumpolar race around the world, which is a virtual 30,000-mile relay. And I had gotten involved with a group of runners from all over the country. And I've tracked just about every single mile that I've ever ran, biked, swam, elliptical. And I don't know the exact distance that I have right now, but all that stuff is in a spreadsheet somewhere, and definitely talking in the thousands.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure of it. I mean, I know that you're, how many 100 milers have you done so far?
The last one that I did was my third.
Your third 100 miler.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, that is an absolute elite group of people. You do understand, like 100 miles is incredible, like absolutely incredible. I mean, has that sunk in for you?
I don't know. Because I read a lot of books on this, I listen to a lot of podcasts. So a lot of my attention goes to all these awesome people who do this thing. I certainly don't think I'm special. I certainly don't think I'm, tougher than anybody. I would say that I'm incredibly average in most things, with the exception of this one rare ability to run super long distances in extreme conditions. So I think that what I possess that allows me to do this can be found in most other people. It doesn't have to be for running 100 miles in the snow. It could be, being the best damn nurse that you want to be, or, the best parent that you want to be. And it goes back to that mindset that you're talking about, just really putting everything into one effort. So yes and no, yes and no.
So whenever you talk about putting it all into one effort, that's something that I'd like to dig in on. Is that, do you mean just being present in the moment during certain situations? Because you talk about being a parent, and you could be the best parent, you could be the best nurse and the best runner. Is it about being present in each one of those circumstances that makes you the best?
If you're getting at mindfulness, then absolutely. But also, on the other hand, for running and building experiments on the computer, there's this degree of flow. You've probably heard people talk about getting into a state of flow, and it's like, it's not even mindfulness. It's like you just kind of keep your eyes moving and eyes focused on something, and the hours just sort of melt away. That makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I've told people that before, is whenever I'm running, you'll look down at your watch and you just peeled off like 10 miles and you don't even you really don't remember even how you got there. Like that's
Yeah.
that's at the point of flow that I get to sometimes, is like you'll just rip off 10, 15 miles and not even realize it.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people reference that. I don't know if there's any actual like physiological sensation that people have found in the brain or the heart. There might be, I don't know, but it's something that we can almost all relate to, even if it's just carpentry or playing the guitar. That
Yeah.
sort of state definitely exists. It's almost undeniable.
Yeah, and then that's brings me to another thing. Your guitar playing. I've been watching you on TikTok, and some of the guitar playing that you've been doing, very innovative and fun to watch, frankly. And you said that you played in bands before. Like, how long did you play in bands? And you did heavy metal, I assume? Like, because yeah.
Yeah, that was my thing when I was a kid. I got really into bands like Slayer and Iron Maiden and Megadeth, probably when I was about 12 years old. And so um, when I was a teenager, I didn't have any interest in going to high school to do schoolwork or anything like that. I was in a metal band and I went to smoke cigarettes in the bathroom and sell concert tickets to our gigs on Saturday night. I was in a couple black metal bands. We had the corpse paint, and I would like bury my clothes in the earth for a couple of weeks before the show, and we'd go and we'd have barbed wire on stage, and it was kind of fun. I mean, that kind of lifestyle is not something that I would want right now. I
Yeah,
definitely, I don't really agree with the because there is somewhat of a mindset that goes into that that's very, I don't know, incompatible with the academic lifestyle and um,
understood.
the ultra endurance mindset. A lot of drugs, a lot of just violence, things that are not cool, man. Just totally not cool. At least not anymore. Maybe when you're 17 or whatever. But also, yeah, like when the band broke up when I was 20, I started playing lap style acoustic guitar, kind of like Eric Mongrain. Some of the guys, John Gomm and Andy McKee, are big influences to me. Did a lot of open mics. I made an album at the beginning of the pandemic. Um, but I'm really rusty right now. I don't get a chance to practice that much because I'm either out on the trail or in the lab. It's kind of fallen by the wayside, but it'll always be there. Like I didn't play the guitar for several years. And then when I lost my job, then started running, I had all this free time and you know, there it was. I reconnected with my instrument and made a CD.
Yeah. And so that's actually really, I'd like to dig in on that too. Like you don't pick something up and then you go to the nth degree on it, making the CD. Like to push yourself and then to put yourself out there, even on social media, and to be able to do this thing in a very public setting. What does that do for you from an accountability standpoint? And does it fuel you? Does it hinder you? Or does it make you more accountable, or none of the above?
It's fun, man. I have a lot of fun doing it because I'm never going to be the best guitar player. I'm probably never going to get a first place finish at Black Canyon's 100K or Western States or anything like that. I'm never going to be the smartest academic. I'm never going to be the best of the best in anything. But I could still have fun doing it, and I could still try, and I could still probably get pretty good at it if I just put a little bit of effort into it and believe in myself, have fun. But as far as accountability goes, I don't know if it really plays into that. Sometimes it does be like, oh, one of my goals this year is to write a book, or that might help a little bit. But at the end of the day, all the social media stuff is just it's fun. I don't watch TV. I don't watch movies. I like Instagram and TikTok, and
Uh-huh.
that's kind of like my junk food.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately too, like you're a performer. You like to perform. So that gives you an outlet to perform as well,
Yeah,
to a
sure.
certain extent.
I don't know if it's going to be feasible to get a band together and play in front of crowds of 500 or more ever again. But I could post a video of me tapping away at the guitar, and
Uh-huh.
that fills that void. There's
Yeah.
definitely a
And
sense of
well, that's the thing though, man. A lot of people don't have alternative, and I call them coping skills. Whenever you lose certain things, like you have to be able to cope somehow. Like this, our lives are so busy and overwhelming that if we don't have some things that we can fall back on, like let's say, watching a movie or listening to music or playing music, having multiple of those coping skills so you don't kind of fall back and reset into that old lifestyle of smoking 3 packs a day is so important to have alternatives. Would in my opinion, it's important. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It also helps like because failure is inevitable in our lives. And so,
Sure.
if I DNF a race, like I could still fall back on my studies. And if I get a poor review and some kind of academic performance, then I could still go out and attempt 100K or something like that. And it's good. It helps me balance my successes and failures and keeps me in check.
Well, and I think what it goes back to as well is like being able to regulate those emotions, not getting too high or too low, sort of staying in that middle ground is the part to me that is the sauce really, because if
Yeah.
you're not able to go too high or too low and you sort of stay towards the middle there, things that are shitty are, they're not going to bother you as much. But the other part too is like when you have a huge accomplishment, you don't get too high on the horse to not like come back down to earth a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like the Flight of Icarus.
Ooh, tell me about this.
Yeah, it's the old Greek myth. Guy's father created wings and they were made out of wax. And if he flew too close to the sun, the wings would melt. And if he flew too low, he would get sucked into the ocean. I think he ended up flying too high and wax, his wings melted. And it's a
Melted.
metaphor.
Flew to his death. I
Dope
understand.
Iron Maiden song too. One of the best Iron Maiden songs. Oh yeah.
Okay. I'll have to give it a listen. I'll tell you, hard rock or like heavy metal stuff, it's hard for me to get into.
It's not
hard.
for everybody. It's not for everybody.
My buddy, my roommate, whenever I was like in community college, he was into it, and I couldn't get into it.
It's fun, different strokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I listen to different music. It's no big deal. But yeah, cool. I'm always interested to know, like, from another endurance runner, and like, it's so daunting, and you always like see people whenever you talk to them, they're like, oh, you're crazy, you're this, you're that. Like, what is your response whenever somebody tells you, man, I don't even like to drive that far?
Yeah. Yeah, it happened. Well, it's kind of like what we just said, different strokes for different folks. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to be successful in 100-mile events to be successful in life. This is kind of a hobby. It's an extreme hobby and a lifestyle decision, but at the end of the day, this is what I choose to do for fun. You know, I met with a therapist for a period of time who definitely would say that my running was a numbing behavior that I was using to deal with, you know, some past traumas, and probably not wrong. I'd still consider them the achievements of a lifetime, but probably not wrong. I bet if you were to, you know, probe any one of us for long enough, you definitely find something in our past that, you know, drives us to do these sort of things. So maybe we are a little crazy. I mean, you've got a 100-mile event coming up. You're registered, right?
I am. Well, not registered yet, but I am definitely doing it.
Yeah, I bet there's something way back in your past that probably inspired that.
Of course. Yeah. And then having a neighbor that was an ultra endurance runner, and myself being over 300 pounds at the time, and then making the change to do that, just like you, the 3 packs of cigarettes was like, you know, beer for me. It was a bad lifestyle, you know, depressive lifestyle. And yeah, making that adjustment was huge. And the fear of never going back to that person has fueled me a huge deal. Because, you know, my priorities are my family and my health and the happiness of those around me. And if I wasn't leading myself in the proper way, I didn't feel like I was being effective at leading my troops and my family. So that was a huge reason why I made my adjustment. So yeah, you want to poke and prod at me, that's the most recent one, but
yeah,
for sure. And the more we talk to each other, like just the endurance community in and of itself, we all have that. We really do. We all have this addictive type of mindset. And they are numbing behaviors, but to a point, it becomes very productive. I feel much more productive being in this lifestyle, even though I dedicate so much time to it. I think the rest of my life has dramatically gotten better.
Yeah, I would agree. There's certainly an element of black and white thinking where it's like I'm either running 100-mile races or, you know, on drugs and smoking cigarettes. There's probably a healthy in between in there somewhere. I just don't think I have the skills to find that right now.
Sure. Yeah, I need to get this 100-miler ticked off of my list, and then I do want to do the stage race in either Hawaii or the Grand Canyon, and then we'll see what happens after that. That'll be my go round with a self-sustained race as opposed to having a team there. Yeah, that's sort of what's on my bucket list moving forward. Is I would like to do a stage race that's a week long, and then just like see if I can do that. And then I think I could live in the middle then after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because at that point, you know, you've done the 100 miler, that's off of the list. And then you do the stage race. And then after that, it's just like, how long can I do this for? And then, you get into longer time. So I like the stage race idea, and then kind of living in the middle after that.
Sure. Yeah. And
I got my
everybody's got a
exit
different
strategy.
threshold. Everybody's got a different threshold. I don't have one because it's like I did the 100 miler and it's like, oh wow, now there's these things 200 miler. And I just found out about this race called Vol State 500K. And it's like, this is why I need therapy and a therapist to tell me these things.
Yeah, that's totally get it. I get it, man. And then another thing, like being involved now that you're going to be involved in the research side of it too. Like you can be a test and not only a test subject, but you could be the proctor as well, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So it gives you a unique opportunity as well inside of the community of endurance runners, is like being able to connect with them and study them, to learn more about the brain. I assume that that's why, you're into what you're into. Can you explain like what drove you into your grad program?
Yeah. So that's a long story. I'm not going to say that my research interests are going to be on the science of ultra. I mean, that's a hobby. I love running. I
Okay.
love psychology, and I love the psychology of running. I study attention here in the lab, attention and emotion, broadly put. Basically, I went to college and took psychology 101 because I wanted to help people. Um, and then I quickly realized that the people who helped me the most in my life were my academic advisors and my professors. And so the idea was, well, I want to become an academic and work in an institution as a professor and conduct experiments on my mentees and teach them how to conduct experiments on their mentees. I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I wasn't quite qualified to do research at any of the institutions around here. So I did do social work for a period of time. I was a case manager at an emergency shelter helping teenagers find housing when they were experiencing homelessness. And it was a good job. It was socially righteous, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was very hard. There's a lot of politics in that kind of work. So I wasn't quite qualified to handle. I did a good job while I was there, but then the pandemic occurred and the job became completely unmanageable. And so I went back to grad school to do research in the
Yeah,
lab.
absolutely. Makes sense. Yeah, I also come from a social work background, and we also did a work to earn, not work to earn. Um, yeah, we would help them find jobs. We would help them do their community service, get those hours ticked off. It was a privatized probation type of thing. So yeah, we would do that, help them again find jobs, find places to live, get to school, all of that. Just kind of being a parent of sorts, an au pair, if you will.
Yep.
But yeah, that was always my gig too, is like I wanted to help others because it just felt right. It felt like that was the thing I was supposed to do. And it gave me a lot of satisfaction. Like I love being able to help others. I think what it really came back to was I like to teach. I love
Yeah.
teaching. I love teaching new skills. And in the social work realm, it allowed me to do that. And I really
Yeah.
liked it. But you definitely don't get rich doing it. And I wanted more. So I got out of that by getting my MBA and getting into more of the business side of things. But now I feel like I'm being called back to that social work side and the philanthropic side of life. And that's something that's been fueling me recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And now as a graduate student, I had the opportunity to help out some of the undergrads with their final projects and be kind of a mentor. And I really like it. I mean, it's a great life. It's a good schedule and just rewarding and fun and challenging, very challenging.
Yeah. What do you find some of the challenges being inside of the academics itself?
Oh God, working with computers. I had very little training in how to deal with computers, and I just had to build an attention task that had thousands of experimental trials. My stimuli were too big to run on the software, and so I kind of broke the software and had to start a dialogue with the developer And the developer was like, I don't know, man, I don't know how to fix this. And
Yeah.
we had to do troubleshooting for about a month, and I got it to work. And uh, you know, overcoming those setbacks and applying those problem solving skills to problems that like even experts don't know what the hell to do with. It's really fun for me.
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to the whole way of breaking down problems and being able to chunk it up and also still have the conviction to see it through to the end. I think
Yeah.
that's the part that's the click, isn't it? Being able to have the ability to see something through, even if it's through failure, just to see it through is an interesting concept in and of itself.
I agree. Yeah, not giving up is the predictor of success for most things. Grad school, endurance, performance. Don't quit.
Yeah, if you don't quit, you can't fail, right?
I mean, there's obviously caveats with that. Like you want to be safe. You don't want to put yourself at risk of injury or harm anybody else in the process, but just keep grinding, carry on.
Yeah, well, that's what I do on the trails, man. It's like, can I get to the next tree? And then once you pass the tree, like you forgot that you were actually trying to get to that tree. Like that's how
Mhm.
much goes through my head as I'm doing this is like 100 yards away. I'm like, you just got to get to that tree. And then by the time I get to the tree, I'm on to something else in my head. And I've passed that tree in probably 6 more miles. But it's like, if you just stop, like I said earlier, if you just stop the process of the spiral,
Mhm.
that's like, that will get you to the next level, like the next hurdle, I guess.
I agree. I do similar things with the music because I'll spend hours making playlists to make sure that I have the right song to come on next, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm.
if I know I'm going to be going uphill at a section, I'll put on something that's good for hiking, and then when I get tired and get to the end of that song, I'll put on something that'll just keep me motivated. It's very effective.
That's amazing that you can go and you're probably looking at the course then and then trying to figure out what your times will be and then to put on songs during those times. Are you holding yourself to times?
So not really. Usually what I'll do is I'll break it down by aid station and start a new playlist after I get out of an aid station.
Okay.
And that seems to work pretty well, at least with the last few races that I've done. With some of the mountain 50Ks, it gets a little bit more challenging. But for the recent events that I've done on the canal path, it's been manageable.
Gotcha. How do you keep everything charged?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Especially the last race that I did was in sub-zero temperatures, which saps the batteries. My strategy for that was if I think I'm going to need something, I'm going to get three, and so I'll have music on the cell phone and the iPod and my girlfriend's cell phone because she's the bomb and lets me use her cell phone. And
Mm-hmm.
every time I get to an out and back, I'll swap it out, and we have charging ports and batteries that we carry with us, and so we'll plug everything in there, and so then when I get back to the next turnaround, we could swap them out again.
Yeah, got it. Now, your recent run that you did, it was in sub-zero temperatures. I saw a picture of your feet. They were pretty well tore up. They
Yeah, my
looked like
toe's
they.
still a little numb.
I was gonna say, it looks like you might have got a little frostbite on there. What was the race? What was it about? What kind of the run me through it?
Yeah, sure. So it's a event that takes place in Lockport, New York, which is just outside Buffalo. It's called the Beast of Burden. They have a 25-mile, 50-mile, and 100-mile distance, and it takes place twice per calendar year. So it takes place in late July, early August, and again right at the beginning of February, end of January. And so they have a special award for anybody who completes both 100 miles in one calendar year. And so I had been fixated on this race for a long time, even before treadmill. I realized like this is the 100-miler that I wanted to do, and so I registered for the winter beast. You needed a 50-mile completion to do summer beast, so I registered for the winter 50 last year. This was 2021, and they canceled it due to COVID, and they waived the 50-mile requirement. And, I had treadmill at this time, so my first 100-miler that was in person and at an actual event was Beast of Burden Summer, and it was just the perfect day. I'm reluctant to use the word perfect, but it was perfect. The conditions were phenomenal. My body felt great going into it. I just made a lot of friends on the course, ended up with a podium finish, finished third place. And when I finished that, I was like, there's no way I'm doing the winter one. And then life stress occurred, as it usually does. And we had an experience in the family, which was a little emotionally challenging. So what do? I sign up for Winter Beast. And yeah, it was a cold day. We had snow on the course on certain sections where it'd be up to your ankles and you had to trudge through the snow, and hydration and nutrition would freeze almost instantaneously. Really good aid stations. I had a really good crew, but it was definitely one of those races that qualify as extreme conditions.
Yeah, that's the part to me that I think I take for granted is the fuel that we're able to suck down during regular weather. Because the other day I went out and it was very, very cold. It was below freezing and all my stuff was frozen. So I couldn't drink anything. Like my hydration packs, there was nothing coming out of it. What do you do? And this is just more for me and anybody else out there who's running bladders. Like, what do you do for hydration at that point when everything's frozen?
It was a big issue, and I think it took a lot of people out of the event because their stuff just froze early on and they couldn't get the ice out. There was a high failure rate that day. I had trained in the cold and my stuff froze, and so I was ready for it. And going back to whatever I think I'm going to need, I'm going to get 3. I ended up buying a bunch of extra pods, and so I would fill them up at one station, and then they had another aid station at about 7 miles in with hot water. I could put some hot water in there and that would sort of melt the ice and get me to the next one. And then I would leave the frozen pods with my crew. They would thaw them out. And then I would just take the new ones and we would just rinse, wash, repeat, do this over and over again. So yeah, I couldn't have done it without my crew. There's just no way.
Yeah, I even went so far as like I put the bladder right against my body to try and keep it from freezing. And then the hose itself, I think moving forward in cold weather, I just need hard bottles.
That's what I did. Yeah. Yep. I had the hard bottles because I've had bad experiences with the rubber bladders, and they've ruptured on me and I've ended up soaking wet. And if that happens in 0-degree temperatures, then you're in trouble. So I'm glad I went with the hard bottles. One silly injury I got was that it was so frozen. I tried to open it up with my teeth and I chipped my tooth.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Which was kind of painful for the next couple of days, but it was also sort of silly. So I wasn't too disturbed about that.
Sure.
Hard bottles, swapping them out with your crew, having them be able to thaw it out, that it really made the day.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I realized the other day was like, I think I need to run hard bottles in the cold because it'll be harder for them to freeze than the soft bladders that I was using, especially with the little hose that comes up from the bladder. That's what was really frozen. Like that thing got frozen solid. The actual bladder pack, the 2-liter, was fine, but the hose that comes up around it was toast.
I suppose you could get a bunch of extra hoses too, because they have them so you can just pop them in and out.
Yeah.
I suggest the bottles, because that happened. I got to the aid station at mile 6, an hour into the event. Somebody's like, my thing's frozen. I'm not gonna be able to use this anymore.
Yep. Exactly. And that's what I'm like kind of scared about. Just with my current setup, it's definitely not suitable for cold weather. So that's all good. Well, hey man, we're coming up on the top of the hour. I could talk racing and running all day with you. What do you have on the agenda here for the next couple races? What do you got going on? And where can they find you at?
Well, I'm on Instagram. I don't know my own name. I got to look it up. You think I'd know that? Shows how serious I am. I've got a couple events coming up. I'm waitlisted for a 45-miler in Letchworth State Park, which is the Grand Canyon of the East. Beautiful course called Many on the Jenny. I think I'm going to bite the bullet and register for 100K down in Virginia. Going to take place at the end of April, early May, because I'm working weekends now, so I can't really race until the end of the semester.
Okay.
And then we'll probably do another 100-miler over the summer. I don't know which one yet. And then I think my big event for the year is going to be next December, and get back on the machine, do treadmill 100, and try to break 100 miles this time. Because with the exception of Summer Beast, every time I've gotten to 100 miles, it was like, I'm not taking another step. This is my limit, and I'm gonna try to break that limit this time.
Okay.
But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm MC_TIE645. And lots of memes, lots of running memes, lots of running stuff and music.
Yeah, I like your Christmas tree that you did too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're always doing cool stuff, man. I do enjoy watching you and following along with you. I'm glad that our paths crossed, and I hope that we can hit the trails again one of these days and knock one of these big ones out together. So
yeah,
thank you so much for coming on and talking about sort of what you have going on, as well as, like, man, I can't believe that you've made the move into grad school and all of these other endeavors. So congratulations to you. Super exciting times for you and yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to be here. It's a great life. I wish you luck in your 100-mile events.
Yeah,
journey of a lifetime. Enjoy it. Enjoy your training and trust your training.
I will.
Yep.
I will, sir. All right, guys. As always, enjoy the journey. Take care. Have a great day, everybody. See you, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sticking here until the very, very end. If you wouldn't mind just leaving a comment or subscribing or liking the podcast or wherever you downloaded this, maybe it was from YouTube, I would love for that. You take an extra couple seconds to give us some more love, even though you have listened here to the very, very end. We appreciate that so much. Could you also go over to thestarspodcast.com if you found any of this really interesting and you wanted to dive in a little bit further, or go to our Discord, which is Rocinante Studios NFT. Enjoy the journey. And be sure to check out our Twitter Spaces Tuesday live crew at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Free NFTs and PO apps.